Good morning, I'm Julio Sainz along with Mauricio Riveros. Today we'll meet students from the Enactus program from Roberts Wesleyan College.
A program that has transformed the way how education goes and developed the capacity to have a global and a local perspective with an impact in the communities, and you will be inspired.
Celebrating leaders in Rochester's unique and vibrant business community, we'll meet entrepreneurs whose passion and perseverance have helped push through life's challenges. Join us as we share their stories and journeys to success. It's time to be inspired.
Lindsey and Isaiah, thank you very much for being our show, Be Inspired, a program that we have developed to present and introduce people like you, people who are innovating, even in the education segment. Sure. You have created an amazing program. You are part of a great program with Roberts Wesleyan. So Lindsey, tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing with the program in Adventus.
Yeah, so at Roberts we run a program called Enactus, which is actually an international organization, and it basically breaks down to standing for entrepreneurial action through us. And so our team identifies different needs within our community, and our team comes up with creative ways to meet those needs. So specifically for this past year, our team has been focusing on the inner city of Rochester with an intervention plan starting from kindergarten and going all the way through 12th grade. And then we've also completed a 5-year commitment with a community in Huehuetenango, Guatemala, both with education purposes as well as business.
That is wonderful, Lindsey. And
you.
I really, value that. So, what's your experience? What you have done with the program?
Right, so this past year I served as one of our project managers for both our Elevate program as well as our Accelerate program. So our Elevate program focuses on students in 8th to 10th grade, and they've been labeled as at risk, so they've either been in trouble with the law or they're not on track to graduate, or they've been suspended at school. And what we do is we send out applications, and we work with partners. So we work with one of Hillside's a big partner of ours, and other local churches and schools. And we give them applications so they can label students that fit our criteria, and we send out applications, they follow through up with them, and they end up coming to our campus for the weekend. So on that weekend, they stay in the dorms with us, they eat at the dining hall, so they get the full college experience being on our campus, and that's from Friday to Sunday. And so while we're there with the students, we have coaches from Roberts Wesleyan who are assigned to each team, and they're able to work and honestly build a relationship with these students that'll last much longer than the weekend. So they get to go through some workshops where they learn some transferable skills that they can use again far after the weekend is over, in whatever facet of life they choose to go down. And then after that, they come up with a service project that they want to see implemented in their community to combat some issues that they've seen. So we've had groups work on anything from homeless people to combat the homeless number in the city of Rochester, to drug and alcohol abuse and different things that they've labeled. And as far as the Accelerate program, that's for students who have aged out of our Elevate program, so are now juniors and seniors in high school. And we've had so many students in the past that have just applied to come back because they've had positive experiences at the Elevate weekend. And so we had 12 teens, again, that were juniors and seniors in high school, and they came back to serve as team leaders and captains and role models for the younger students. So they had a unique perspective of being students who came up through the program, did a 180 turn, some students who were on track to be in gangs and not graduate, who are now, black scholars and things of that nature, are just able to pour into these young students. So I was kind of in charge of both of those.
Wow, sounds like a lot of work.
Just a little bit, yeah.
So as college students, how do you find the time to, first of all, about how many hours a week are you putting into this program, and how do you find time to balance your academics with this incredible, impactful program?
The weekend is a lot of hours, which I would say around 30 hours in that weekend. But on an average week, you're meeting with our project managers. So my co-project manager for both of those, her name was Tanya. We would meet, probably once or twice a week for an hour, and then we'd have Friday meetings as well. And then our general Enactus meetings were another hour. So you're looking anywhere from probably 3 to 5 hours in a week that you're doing it. And balancing it, you just got to make it happen. You got to put things that are less important aside, just because we know the significant impact that we're making in the lives that we're changing.
Lindsey, you have been overseeing this program now for years, and how do you see the change of our leaders, these young leaders who are taking the responsibility to do
Yeah.
is something that will impact their lives and the way how they will be actually graduating from the university. And probably they will have the skills to do their own businesses, being project managers, being leaders.
For sure.
So what's the impact? What do you see? What you were able to see on this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in terms of looking at different students, I wasn't an active student when I was in college, way back in like 2007 and to 2011. So having the opportunity of just being put in a position to be a project leader, it grows your strength, how to communicate with people, how to put yourself in front of a group of, you know, executives and CEOs and present projects that we've been working on. So communication is a huge skill. How to actually interact and network with different leading CEOs, how to interview with different people. Because Enactus, being an international organization, it also has several sponsors like Jack Links or Walmart, Sam's Club, several other people. So you actually get to interact with those business leaders and say, how do I actually approach you? What are the characteristics that you're looking for when it comes to a future employee? And so to see some of our students come in very timid and shy, and then just to see them be like shining stars at the end, walking across the stage with job offers that says, you know, I've been a part of Enactus and I've learned how to become a better leader. I've learned how to project manage. Time management is huge with a project like Enactus, just because students think, oh yeah, this will be like a 1-2 hour thing and I'll be done. But once you start investing more time and you get those connections made with our inner city teens, or even in Guatemala, most students are like, I love this, I'm so passionate, I want to keep doing more research, I want to come up with more creative ideas. And so you just have these students that are just eager to make a change. And that's what brings most joy to me, is like seeing students that want to be active leaders within their community, identifying needs, because Rochester in itself has so many different needs. It's how do you actually identify what needs do we want to meet and how can we best utilize the team that we have to do it. Enactus, we don't necessarily assign projects per se, but we have students that have passion. So if you have an art skill, you know, maybe you have the opportunity to be a part of our marketing team where you can actually design different logos or design annual reports that we use for the competition. We have students that want to do like business consulting. So they work with some of our smaller local businesses here or not-for-profit churches, things like that, to help them with social media, website design, and really getting the opportunity to utilize the things that they're learning in the classroom and applying it to actual practical clients.
Now, you described two of your projects, the one in Guatemala, which we'll hear more about in the second half of the show,
Sure.
and the project in the Rochester City Schools.
Yeah.
Those are two very different subject areas.
Sure
How
is.
do you come about choosing the project, and what's the life cycle? You pick it for a year, two?
So we try to make commitments longer than a year because we want it to be sustainable. So when it comes for international projects, it's usually like a 1 to 5 year sustainable project timeline. And we also want to do that with our inner city. I mean, it's right in our backyard. It's 15 to 20 minutes away from campus. So we want to make sure that we're continually looking at the needs here in Rochester. Our longest running project, which is Elevate, we have like 4-8 projects. So sorry for any confusion when we mention them. But that's actually been in existence for 8 years now. So this has been the inaugural 8 year, which has been amazing. And so we just kind of keep that timeline going, but each year is a little bit different. How can we change the project a little bit more to satisfy a bigger need? Or this year we incorporated more business aspects. So digital media, how do you use your iPhone versus like big cameras to make videos? And 100% of our students that went through the program and actually were broken up into teams, use the digital media aspects. They made their own websites. They started a blog on their own. So it's really cool just to see those aspects and those particular skills used within Elevate. But yeah, we try to keep the partnerships as long as possible.
In your life, what would be the way how you can describe the impact that this program has had?
Well, this project, working in the inner city of Rochester, hits home for me because I grew up in the inner city of Rochester, right on Dewey Avenue in a pretty rough neighborhood. And eventually my parents were like, we need to get us out of here just because it wasn't safe. So, you know, I've seen friends that have, you know, served life sentences now just because they didn't get these opportunities like the students who come through our program get. You know, they didn't have any guidance and people pushing them in the right direction, and they suffered for it. And so just for me to be able to see that we're making an impact, it only, you know, pushes me to go harder in what we're doing. Just because, again, these are people that I know and I grew up around, and it's, you know, people like I consider family at times that is like, okay, these kids are getting their lives changed. And I think I've been fortunate and blessed enough to have had, you know, people working hard and giving me opportunities that I don't have to worry about not being on track to graduate and things just because I've had people in my corner. So if I can help one or two kids do that, you know, I think it's a blessing for me just as much as it is for them, just because I can see that growth that they have, which is just, it just brings a smile to my face.
Wow. And as far as getting, do you find it hard to get other students involved? Is it, you have to twist some arms, or do you find people that are really passionate about this?
We get a mix. You know, when people get involved, they're like passionate about it like that because they see the work that we do. And I think when people get to see the actual presentation of all the things that go into what Enactus is all about, it's so much easier to get them involved in that, you know. Because, you know, Elevate's our biggest program, a lot of times people get confused and think Elevate and Enactus are two different things, when in actuality, Enactus is an umbrella that Elevate is underneath. So getting people involved can be a challenge at times just because it's a time commitment, and it's, you know, it's a year-long program that we have at times. But once they get their foot in the door and they see what it's all about, and that just comes from the students who are involved in it, you know, getting out there and reaching out to their friends and saying, hey, come to this meeting and see what we're all about. And once they get their foot in the door, it's a piece of cake keeping them attached just because they see the work that gets done.
Sure. And so after this break, we'll be back with more about Enactus.
We are back with this great interview, talking about something that Roberts is doing and is transformational. And we have talked about what was the impact of this program in the city.
Sure.
But now let's go a little bit beyond our borders, and we'll talk about Guatemala. And for that reason, we have also Savannah here, who have been experiencing that program and is the president, the current president of this great program. So tell us a little bit, Savannah, what you guys have done in Guatemala and how that works.
Yeah, so we started our project called El Puente, which means the bridge in Spanish, and it's how we connect Rochester to a town in Guatemala called Huehuetenango. And we had an alumni who saw a need in Guatemala in the specific town that he was working in and said, I think there's something that you can do about it. So 5 years ago, we started a 5-year commitment with Story International, and they helped us to create our project where we implement all the same projects that you just heard about in Rochester, but in Guatemala.
So you have learned to work with different cultures.
Yes.
And be able to overcome the language barriers. There is elements about even physical barriers, a lot of things that happen when we go to a different nation. What are the elements that you can highlight that have changed your life even to understand that and pass through that experience?
Yeah, so first of all, I took like 4 years of Spanish in high school and I didn't pay attention to any of the 4 years. So going into Guatemala and teaching business practices in Spanish was something completely new to me, and being able to learn those new words and learn the culture was something that has changed my life. And I use literally 3 days ago when I had to speak to a family in Spanish completely because they didn't know any English, but I knew enough Spanish to tell them what was going on. And that's all because I've been to Guatemala and because I've learned enough from doing things with Enactus that I could kind of interact with them.
Wow. And now I have never heard of this town.
Yeah.
Is it, how much of a trek is it to even get there?
So we usually fly out from Rochester or Toronto and we fly into Guatemala City. And then we take a van or a bus, depending on who picks us up, and we shove everybody into one vehicle, and then we drive about 6 hours. If there's traffic, it's maybe 8 or 9 or 10. Wow. It's a lot of driving, and it's a lot of windy roads, and a lot of people get motion sick, but we make it work.
That's commitment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I value is that you are expanding the minds of the people. One thing that I love of this program is that you now are creating those connections, those international connections.
Sure.
Lindsey, in your experience, how those relationships expand in terms of student to student, these young kids who receive the support now, what do you see in terms of sustainability?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of the students that we bring down, it's a great opportunity, like Savannah said, to really learn what is it to be in another culture. And a lot of times we've gone back 5 years. And each of those years, we always have students that want to continually come back and say, what growth has happened since the last time we were here? So, you know, the first year, we kind of scoped out, like, what place do we want to build a cafe? Where do we want to put a roastery? And then the second year we come back, we actually like open up this cafe and we provide jobs and we hire students from the orphanage to come in, and they're actually learning practical skills. How do I run a business? How do I roast beans? How do I make the proper coffee? And then the next year you come back and you see, oh, they've actually expanded this a little bit more. And there's a few more people that are working at locals, mind you, from Guatemala, that are actually working in the cafe. And one of the girls is actually learning how to, you know, be a chef, so they can actually add not only the cafe aspect, but also provide food for the locals as well. Because in Guatemala, the culture isn't like you go to a coffee shop here in the States and you just go for coffee. It's more like entertainment and actually eating. And that's one of like the assessments that they did when they're realizing, you know, what types of skills should we bring, or what should we have in this particular cafe for it to be successful. And so she went to school. She actually went to college to learn culinary. And so we actually got to see her through that process. And now she's one of the main managers there, organizing their food processing. So there's both growth on the national side for Guatemalans, as well as for our students who continually want to go back. We've had students that have graduated and have spent a summer or two at this particular location, either through Story or through the cafe, to really kind of oversee and make sure things are continue going well. So everyone's kind of growing and making sure that this is sustainable. But we also make sure that we make it a short-term plan. So 5 years is our limit, because we also realize from previous engagements that we've had with other international organizations that we don't want them to become dependable on the Americans that are coming down, right? So we have a 5-year plan and a contract put in place. And then once that comes through, we want to make sure that there's an end goal and making sure that you feel that you can sustain this business longer, or for Story International to make sure that you have the practical needs and skill sets to continue on. And so we just want to make sure that, you know, we're not just dependent. We want to maintain that, and we want to continue talking with them and learning their updates, but we also want to see them do it on their own now. And as we get ready to explore new opportunities, we're one team, right, that can make a difference in multiple different locations. And so we're exploring what that next location could be like, or where it could be, and, you know, spreading our love for multiple countries.
No, very good. And how do you fund something like this?
Great question. So some of it is self-fundraising, some of it's grants that we get. We have an awesome alumni network that loves Enactus, which used to be called SAFE. So students that had been a part of it when it first started at Roberts are still like, how can I get involved? So they'll be a part of some of our, you know, annual campaigns. We have a great marketing and advancement team that are continually talking to some of our you know, donors that are just saying, where can I put a little bit of extra money to actually help students develop leadership goals, but also experience great things like going to Guatemala. I will say, not this past year, but the year before, we actually took 8 of our Elevate students from the inner city with us to Guatemala for the first time. I mean, that was probably the first time they've ever even been out of the country. Like, you could literally hear them gasping, like, as we're like flying off the ground. But just for them to have that transformational opportunity. And again, that was all funded through different alumni fundraising events that we've done, and just really people buying into the passion and opportunity of just saying, I want to make a difference here in Rochester. If it can't be for me, how can I help the school?
And you know, we also have another project that we haven't talked about called Restore Consulting. And so that's our students who want to do business consulting and go into the smaller businesses in the city of Rochester, and they help us to create income for our team. They provide services and they charge for them, and that's how we provide funds for our own team and all the things that we do.
That is fantastic. So you are basically integrating now. You are creating some capacity to generate revenue.
Exactly.
And be able to give back again and go back to the program and transform communities. And that is fundamental. I think one of the things that we interview a lot of business owners.
Sure.
And a lot of the entrepreneurs that we interview, many of them, they said, well, I wish I learned those things in the university. And seems like Now the university, and Roberts particularly, is going in that direction to bring practical skills, practical experience to the students. So is that something that Roberts is working more and more, Lindsey? What is the strategic vision around growing that mindset in the university?
Yeah, I mean, specifically with Enactus, we're always looking for new partners to develop our students, but also to kind of say, how can we practically connect you and network you with other organizations here in Rochester? And we're also working on big things within the school of how can we also, like the School of Business, interact with different companies. So that might be, you know, a smaller organization bringing a spokesperson into a classroom and saying, this is a scenario that I have, and how can your students actually help me with this? So they might come up with a marketing plan. They might do a SWOT analysis for a particular company and say, these are the things that we're identifying as a student, and here's an idea that we're giving to you, and hopefully that a company will actually consider implementing that within their organization. So there's a lot of mixture of that we're trying to implement here at the school level too, as well as an organization, just to see how we can better help the community here.
We are really excited to see what is happening in Roberts. It's really excited that you guys are impacting our city, but also overseas. Thank you very much for your time. You have inspired us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Coming up next week on Be Inspired, we talked with founder and CEO of Tipping Point Communications, Michelle Ashby. Ashby was named Business Person of the Year in 2014 by the Small Business Council of Rochester and has been involved in the communications industry for over 25 years. To watch today's episode and the complete interviews of our guests, go to rochesterfirst.com/beinspired. For more great talk with Rochester's entrepreneurs, listen to Poder 97.1 Saturdays at 9 a.m. For Mauricio Riveros, I'm Julio Saenz. We'll see you next week on Be Inspired.